Here we go. Let's do this.
We've got one life, one shot. Who do you want to be? What do you want to do? Addicted to Betterment, a podcast to inspire us to keep going, to try something new, to dream, to think big, bigger, to overcome. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go.
Man, I feel like I say this all the time, but this might be one of my favorite episodes I've recorded. I think I say that about all of them. Maybe this is my favorite guest, and I actually say that about all of them too. So David here, Addicted to Betterment, and I am excited for today's episode. I tell you what, I am a little excited more than most, and here's why. So most of my life, I've had the opportunity to meet a lot of famous athletes and be surrounded by high achievers and very successful people. But there's something that has always been within me that I admire, people that are at the highest level in the military or special forces or law enforcement. And I have a lot of those friends that have done some really great things. And I think it's because I never did that. And so I have this man crush on the guys that do. And so today's guest, my friend, colleague, Jacob Anderson, former fighter pilot, business owner, successful business owner at that. But more importantly, just an incredible human that I'm excited to learn from today and share this knowledge with you. So Jacob, thank you so much for being on. I do want to tell you, I sent your wife a text message and said, hey, send me your husband's highlight reel. The things that he's not going to tell me. That might be one of the worst mistakes I've ever made. About 68 texts later, after she got done rolling out your highlight reel, I said, hey, stop. My phone is going to explode. So I'm not going to try to dive into the highlight reel, but man, thank you so much for being on. Excited to have a conversation today.
Hey, well, thanks for having me, David. Like I said, it's good when your wife's your biggest fan. And like I said, I'm a low key guy. I don't like attention. I never did. When I was a kid, I was like, Mom, stop taking pictures. That was what I was always saying. So I just like being the guy in the background that's out there executing. So thanks for having me, though, David. You're a great friend. It's great to be here and just great to have a conversation with you. Right. And, maybe there's one or two things that I say that people can take away from this.
Absolutely, man. We talk to a lot of high achievers, high performance people. And, man, I feel like today we're going to be talking about performance at the highest level and kind of dive into the mindset of what leaders think when they're in the cockpit of a fighter jet, something I've never experienced. So before we dive in, just give us your story, man. I know you obviously a fighter pilot. We already shared that, but kind of take us back to, before that and share your story and bring us up to today.
Yeah, of course. So I grew up in a few different cities, but majority of my time growing up, I was a farm kid in Idaho. So I had my first job. I was in the 5th grade, moving sprinkler pipe in the fields of Idaho before school. And then, I graduated high school and, like most farm kids that want to do more, they go, I want to go see the world. I want to do things, and I was always motivated. And my dad had said, hey, I had this high school physics professor that he was an F-4 pilot in Vietnam. I said, you know what? That sounds really cool. I think I want to do that. I was 17 years old at the time. And ever since then, I said, you know what? That's what I'm going to do. Google wasn't around at the time. Yahoo was. So I got on Yahoo and I Yahooed how to become a fighter pilot. First thing I said was, oh, crap, I got to go to college. Didn't want to do that. But built a plan from there. The good thing about the military, too, is I didn't know a single pilot. I didn't have any connections, nothing. But the good thing with the military, they provide a very clear path to getting somewhere. And so I just had to follow the steps and have the motivation to keep following those steps and take that years and years of work of that delayed gratification to finally get there. So that's really my story, And then, I served about 12 years in the Air Force. I got a spinal injury, and that kind of ended my fighter pilot career. I went back to school, got my MBA with a GI Bill, and then I've always been passionate about creating. I think human beings were born to create. I think that's what entrepreneurship is all about. And so that's when I wanted to get into entrepreneurship, and then that led into the business world at that point. And I just love creating. I love creating new businesses and innovating inside the business that we currently have.
Interesting. So a random question that just popped into my head when you were talking about the fighter jet. do they really go as fast as they seem like they go when you're in the cockpit? So I know that's a dumb question, but I mean, how fast does it feel like you're going?
Honestly, when you're going when you're down at 500 feet and you're going 600 miles an hour, yeah, it feels fast. You're about 3 seconds from hitting the ground at any point. So you literally have to have under a 3 second cross check back inside to make sure that you're not going to hit the ground. So that feels fast. But when you're going, Mach 1.8 at 40,000 feet, it just feels like you're in an airliner. Honestly, you look at the gauge and you say, I am going fast, apparently. Yeah.
I love it. That brings me to just kind of a question when I'm thinking about, I want to dive into kind of your mindset and some lessons maybe that you learned that you would share and that sort of thing. But what's one of the most intense moments that you've ever faced as a fighter pilot when you were, sitting in the cockpit? What's one of the most intense moments that you faced?
Yeah. There's a lot of stories to pull from, just to give some context. So I flew the F-15E Strike Eagle. It's a 2-seat. So we've got like a goose in the back, that focus on the weapon systems. And then we're doing everything else in the front. Got about 2,000 hours in the F-15. That's probably over about 10 years, 500 hours, 139 combat missions. So a lot. And the one thing that probably I can draw maybe the most intense experience. So I don't know if you realize in 2011, we went into Libya, if you can remember back then. I was stationed at Royal Air Force Base Lakenheath in England. We were one of the first squadrons to go in there. So we basically kind of kicked off that whole event. I was flying night 2 of the war. So this has just kicked off. We were basically flying from northern Italy down to Libya, doing our missions and then flying back. They're about 7 or 8 hour sorties. So a long time to be in the air. Multiple air refuelings. I was briefing a mission to go night 2. We were going to go hit some targets inside of Libya. I can't even remember what they were, because during the brief, which never happens, like the brief is sacred. Like nobody, once that door closes at your briefing, nobody interrupts you unless it's like life or death situation. Somebody knocked on the door and they interrupted our brief. I said, oh, something's going on. Somebody comes in the brief and I'm briefing up just a 2-ship, 2 Strike Eagles to go in. And they said, hey, 2 of our buddies, I won't put any names on there, but they just went down over Libya. This is the middle of the night. So they had ejected. They thought that they had been shot down by a surface-to-air missile site that we thought was inactive, but it was active. Nobody really knew what was going on. But they said, hey, you were going to go do this. Now your mission is completely changed. Go get your gear on, and you're going to brief at the operations desk right before you step out. A completely new mission, which usually would take about an hour to brief, maybe 3 hours to plan. It was now split second at the desk. Let your training kick in, give a quick brief, and get out the door, because your mission now is to go find that surface-to-air missile site, kill it, and then go try and find your 2 guys that are down there, because we don't know where they're at. So that was a pretty intense situation to do that. One, the surface-to-air missile site in question, we didn't have really a good detection ability to even detect it. So we're going to go fly in tonight to go try and kill a surface-to-air missile site that we really can't detect. But, at that point, like I said, the training kicks in, right? And I think what brings the gravity of it is what your purpose is, Like all the guys we were flying with, we knew our purpose. No words need to be said. We go out and execute the mission. So that was pretty intense. The good end of the story is those 2 guys were both recovered. They kind of split up over the ground. One of them, the front seater, was picked up by a Marine Force Recon, which was awesome. The Marine Force Recon, they came in an Osprey, and it wasn't even their role, their job, but they were out in the Mediterranean. They said, hey, you know what? We got an Osprey. We got a bunch of, badass special forces guys. We will be airborne in 20 minutes. We'll go get it. And they did, and it was awesome. The other guy spent about 5 years or 5 days in Benghazi, and then we were able to recover him too. So that was probably like the most intense thing. Funny thing is, the next day, so the backseater, it was his very first combat sortie. Never flown in combat before. Probably had 100 hours in fighter jets at that point. So really bad luck or really good luck, however you look at it. But the interesting part about the next day, I was an instructor at that point. And so I was, this is my 3rd combat deployment, so I felt like I was, equipped to lead the guys. I had a brand new first combat sortie guy in my back seat. And then on my wing, my wingman, the front seat or the pilot, it was his very first combat sortie too.
Okay.
So as you can imagine, these guys didn't say anything, but I could just tell the tension in the air that they were very nervous that something, hey, is something bad going to happen? It was just last night. We just lost a strike eagle. Like, what's going to happen today? And so, the true honor of that whole situation was that I was able to, right, build confidence in them, that they can trust their training. They were trained appropriately, and that I was going to lead them in and out of there, and we were going to be just fine. And the good news was about that sortie is we flew that sortie, it went flawlessly. We hit multiple targets. It changed as it always does. And that we came back, and those guys, the confidence after being able to execute that was just really pristine at that point. So for me as a leader in the military, that was probably like one of my most favorite memories of leadership in that moment, was to give those guys that confidence after something like that happened.
What a powerful story. Thank you for sharing that. If you can, Jacob, take me back. So you've done the training, you're in the briefing room, and they knock on the door, and your plan that you were briefing changes. And they said, hang on, change of plans. Can you take me back to what was going through your mind at that time? You've done the training, your plans have changed. Now it's urgent. The shit's hit the fan, so to speak. What's going through your mind at that time? Can you remember?
Yeah. I mean, to start, nobody likes when plans change, right? You have your mind set. This is what we're doing. These are my expectations of this is how this is going to go. So the hard part about, and once again, in aviation, especially in fighter aviation and in combat, the ground guys know, right? The same thing. No plan survives first contact with the enemy. Things change. So really it was like, okay, I have to now pull myself back and shift my mindset and wipe the slate clean and start over. And then at that point, really what was going through my mind is I'm glad that I have trained endlessly on this type of mission before, so that I can now pull into those recesses, right? Pull that back into the conscious brain and go, okay. But, what really went through my mind at the ops desk, I think when like devastating things happen in life all the time, right? In your business or your life, right? You have to pull yourself out of the weeds, out of the details, and go, what is the big picture here? I think we've all seen that movie, Mel Gibson. He's in the Vietnam War. If you remember, I forget what the name of the movie was, but he's the commander, and they're boots on the ground in Vietnam, and they're being attacked from all directions.
I haven't seen it.
And everybody's screaming and all these details and things, and it's chaos. And what does he do? He drops everything. He stands in the middle, upright, and he just looks around and observes. He's pulling back. I got to see the forest through the trees here. What truly is the most important thing? We need to simplify things, right? What is the most important thing we need to do? And in that moment, that's what I had to do too. All right. Okay, it's changed, guys. Forget everything else. Here's the 3 things that we need to do today. Simplify this, right? And now let's go execute. So
I would imagine that a mass majority of the people that take this conversation in, listen to it, whether on the treadmill or at the gym or driving down the road, probably don't relate to a fighter pilot, probably don't relate to flying a jet at Mach. But what every single person in our society can relate to today is that chaos and constant change. I feel like we are living in a world, the business world, the financial world, our political system, our religious ecosystem that we're in right now. It is all chaos. And I'm kind of, when you said that, just diving into, what are 2 of the 3 top principles that you would say help you in those moments of chaos to stay grounded, as you put it?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is you have to know what your purpose is. People, human beings, we have to have purpose. Without purpose, you felt like you don't know who you are. What were you designed to do? Who are you? And then I think once you decide your purpose, you need to determine, and this is just for me speaking internally, what is the vision for where I'm going? If I don't know where I'm going, right? If I don't know what I'm supposed to achieve, then when I meet an obstacle, I'm going to change direction. But if I know where I'm going when I meet an obstacle, I'm going to jump over it. I'm going to go around it. I'm going to go over it. So I think that's a really important thing, especially, in life when things change, right? Whether that's a health scare with your health, or your business makes a bad mistake that causes a lot of chaos, right? You really got to understand what that purpose is, at the highest level for not only your business, but yourself as a person.
What a powerful statement. Jacob, you and I are friends, and also, business colleagues. And I talk to business owners every single day, all day. That's really all I do. And I tell you what, that statement that you just made can resonate with business owners, I think, right now more than anything. It feels, I have talked to multiple people this week that are running very successful companies, doing it at a high level, highly driven, highly competent, and have faced serious setbacks, serious moments of change. They've faced their own moments of the knock on the door saying, plans have changed. And it's interesting as you talk about that. How do fighter pilots, did you train your brain to perform under stress in the midst of chaos? How'd you train that?
Yeah, definitely. And it's funny. There's a lot of corollaries between what I did and just normal business and day life. The first thing is preparation, right? Preparation was everything in the fighter world, in the aviation world, is you have to be thoroughly prepared for the mission. To put that in context, so for every hour that we would fly, depending on the mission, if it was an air-to-ground sortie where we were going to basically do air-to-air combat and then air-to-ground combat and then maybe air-to-air combat coming out, right? It was probably about 3 to 4 hours of preparation for just maybe an hour and a half of flight, right? So you're preparing not only here's the plan, but here's all the contingencies that might happen. The second thing I would say is that you have to have a commitment to excellence. So it's preparing. And once again, this is no different than everyday life, right? I have to be committed to achieving excellence. And that's okay when we fall short. I've made more mistakes than anybody, both in the aviation world and in the business world, right? But every time I make a mistake, I'm committed to rising above it, learning from it, committed to excellence. That kind of leads into the third point is you can do those two, but if you're not committed to learning and adapting, then you're going to stagnate and you're not going to grow and you're not going to get better. In the fighter world, for every probably hour and a half flight that we flew, the higher the level you get, the longer the debrief goes. And when you're in a training mission, it's obviously a bigger debrief. But when we were actually training skills, it could be a 4-hour debrief for a 1-hour flight. We would spend 4 times as much time going through the tapes, every single button switch, every single thing. I go, was this error? Was this a perception error? Did you perceive the situation incorrectly? Was it a decision error? Did you make the wrong decision in this situation? You perceived it correctly, you made the wrong decision, right? Or did you just execute it poorly, right? The mechanics for how you executed that maneuver or that was incorrect. And we would go through that for 4 hours. But you'll see when we did that, we clearly have the best Air Force in the world, if we look at, what the B-2s just did, and by the way, all the airplanes that were part of that you didn't hear about, or we were able to go strike those nuclear facilities in Iran, it's absolutely incredible what they were able to do. No other Air Force in the world would be able to do that. And my opinion is, it's because we have that culture of excellence and debrief. Because that's the feedback cycle, right, in your business. So I think sometimes in life, and I'm guilty of it more than anybody, when we do stuff and then we don't go and debrief, right? Because it's hard to hold people accountable. I tell you what, many, many, many hundreds of debriefs, I've come out of there feeling like somebody just kicked my dog. I'm just feeling horrible, right? Because, man, somebody was pointing out all the errors that I made. But when you take the long look of that afterwards, you can see where I went from here to here because I was willing to deal with that discomfort of accountability to get better and then start that whole cycle again.
Man, this is a leadership masterclass, Jacob. It's interesting. Everybody talks about a culture of excellence. Everybody. Every company, every HR person, every CEO says, we have a great culture. We have culture of excellence. They believe that. Very few are willing to do what you just described. That hard accountability, mutual accountability to say, I'm going to show up to look at, break down what we're doing, what we did. Did it go well? And I would imagine what didn't go well in those meetings was finger pointing, deflecting blame. That probably didn't go well. And my guess is, in a culture of excellence, did it even happen?
Yes, definitely. You're so spot on. Everybody talks about excellence, but very few can systematize how you actually achieve that. I think two things that we use in the fighter world that maybe people can take away from here on that accountability piece is, one, you have to have clear metrics set beforehand that people are either meeting or not meeting. And then the numbers are the ones that set the story. So it's not just an emotional opinion. Bob, you're terrible. Why? Because I just don't like you. It's, Bob, remember when we briefed this mission that you were going to achieve this? You didn't achieve that. Look, here's the numbers that show that, right? Now let's talk about why that wasn't achieved. Let's help understand and pull out we called it the truth data in the flying world, right? We had truth. It was truth gathering session. And then it was, once we had the truth data, this is actually what happened. Now it was, okay, now let's talk about how we get better on that. Something else I'll add on the accountability piece. It's easy when you're the expert and you're the leader and you did everything perfectly and you're telling your guys, you're terrible and here's why, and you're terrible and here's why. But true leadership is about holding yourself accountable to your guys. I have been on multiple stories where I am the instructor of record. I'm leading 8 or 16 airplanes in a whole mission from multiple bases. Like, this is a training mission. It's 32 airplanes fighting. And I'm like, you know what? The biggest error made why number 3 and 4 got killed today is because I made a mistake. Crap. How am I going to handle that now? Now, I'm supposed to be the one standing up telling people what not to do wrong, and I'm the one that made the mistake. And, what I had to learn was, you build a lot of trust with your people when you're willing to hold yourself accountable in front of them. So I had to stand up and say, hey, number 3 and 4 died today because it was my mistake. Here's what I did wrong. Here's what I'm going to do next time to not do that, right? Versus we've all had the boss or been the boss. I've even made that mistake of trying to cover up your mistakes. But your people see those. They really do see those. And when they see you cover up your mistakes, but then you hold them accountable, it erodes all trust that you have with them. But vice versa, if you do it the other way around, it will build trust.
Powerful. It's interesting that you just, how well you articulated that, because I love how you said, we've seen and been that guy, right? I get to be surrounded by some incredibly successful people right now. The ones that I admire the most and the ones that I learn from the most and the ones that honestly I respect and would go to war with the most are the ones that are constantly saying, man, I messed that up. And it's easy to, when you're in the leadership position and we talk about, culture of excellence, holding people accountable. And where a lot of people get that wrong is, okay, I'm holding people accountable. Yeah, well, it starts with holding yourself accountable. And that, when you do that, I mean, listen, that applies to in the home. It applies to leading your family. It applies to leading a business. In every area of life, when you start there and look in the mirror and say, okay, wait, I messed up, how that changes. Anything else you would add to what some of the things that contribute to that culture of excellence that you described?
One more thing I would add to that is kind of along the accountability piece, right? It applies now. I fail all the time as a father, as a husband, as a business leader. What we used to say in the fighter community was, you're only as good as your last mission, right? You're only as good as your last mission. It means every day you start fresh, where you can win it or lose it, right? It's just because I did this for 20 years doesn't mean that now I get to make mistakes, right? You are only as good as that last mission. And that means, on a daily life, I have to look at myself and say, today, Was I a good dad? Oh, crap, I wasn't. Today, was I a good father? Today, was I a good husband? Was I a good business leader? Today, was I good to myself? Did I actually, right, accomplish what I was hoping to accomplish today for myself, you know? So, yeah, it's just that constant commitment. Like I said, that constant commitment to excellence, it begins and ends each day. But the good news is you can start fresh because, you know, so many missions, I was terrible the day before, right? And I'm kicking myself and, you know, like, oh, that's so bad. And then it actually causes you that feedback to get better. And then the next day you have a wonderful mission, right? Or a wonderful day at work or a wonderful decision that you execute in your business, right? So, but just that constant commitment to doing this every single day.
It's something you said I want my friends to hear. I want to put an exclamation point on what you said, is just admitting that you are wrong and owning that. You know, stop posturing, stop hiding, stop deflecting, stop trying to ignore the failures. One of my best friends, one of the people I admire and respect the most, who's killing it. I mean, this dude is a baller in every area of life. And I always looked at him like that. You know, we kind of in the same circles and would, you know, have conversations. And we were in a business meeting one day, having a conversation, and our conversation turned personal, and he got real and was like, man, I am struggling in these areas. And I tell you what, it did two things. One, it formed an incredible friendship that I cherish. Second is now he in my book, he didn't go down. He actually went up in my book, because I'm like, now this dude's a real brother. This dude's real. And he's, you know, when someone's trying to pretend like they have it together, you know, and you can see, it's interesting how you said, like, everybody around you can see the faults and the failures. You may be hiding them. You may be deflecting them. You may be posturing, but it's out there. Everybody can see it. And so stop posturing. To my friends, my brothers, stop posturing. Stop acting like you have it figured out. The power is saying, hey, I suck today. I messed it up. Tomorrow I'm going to fix it. Tomorrow I'm going to get better. I love how you described that again. Not only a masterclass in leadership, but being a father, being a husband, being a spouse, being a contributor to our society today. I feel like something you just said is something we're battling in society. Everyone's, you know, got to act like this party or this group or this has it all figured out and everybody's wrong. No, we don't. We're all in this journey of humanity together. I want to dive further into your mindset. I'm super intrigued by what you're sharing. Actually, I'm inspired and challenged. But before I do, I got to ask a random question. Are there any myths about fighter pilots that you would just bust with me today?
Yes, absolutely. That we're cool. So funny. Right? People think, I mean, you've all seen Top Gun and Top Gun 2, which, by the way, I thought was way better than the first. Just solid. My favorite aviation movie. It's just, I could go talk for hours on. I thought it was really well done.
Okay.
But you know, everybody there is, you know, good looking and fit and cool and rides motorcycles and they got their life together, right? But it's funny, if you walked into a real fighter squadron, you might walk around based on that perception and go, wait, these guys are doing that? It's crazy, you know? I had a commander that once said, you can be cool or you can be good. He said, I've probably met over 35 years, two people that can be cool and good, but I suggest that you choose which one you want to be and just focus on that, right? So it was like, stop trying to posture, stop trying to be cool and play the part. You know, and it's funny, I mean, I remember these guys are Top Gun graduates. Air Force, we call it fighter weapons school. It's 6 months. Top Gun is like, I think 6 weeks. So this is way more in depth than they go into Top Gun. Right. I'm sure all my Navy bros will contest that, but that's my stance. And these guys were some of the best tactical aviators I've ever flown with in my life. And you know what? They drove a minivan to work, right? And it had car seats in the back and goldfish scattered everywhere, right? They're just normal guys, right? But the one thing they said is like, I'm committed to being good, right? I don't care what I look like, posturing this and mess on the ground. So yeah, that's probably the biggest myth with fighter pilots. We're all a bunch of dorks.
So I would have agreed with you and said you're one of my most boring friends, and that's okay. until I asked your wife to send me your highlight reel, and suddenly, man, your cool factor. I mean, if it was up to her, I think pretty sure you would be on Mount Rushmore. Like, this list is at least 97 text messages or something like that. So thank you for
I got a free PR agent. Yeah, she's great. Yeah, because I couldn't do it myself.
I would say so. One of the things you were just talking about was, the in that culture of excellence, in that debriefing and the accountability of how important is the feedback that you're getting in that accountability sessions to your growth. So it's one, you said, man, I leave there feeling beat up because I got told all the things that I did do or didn't do. But how important is that accountability to how you're flying the fighter jet, to how you're doing the mission?
Just if you set a culture in your company that accountability is going to happen, people are going to make one of two choices, right? They're going to take that accountability and they're going to make themselves better from it, or they're going to make excuses and not improve because of a myriad of maybe personal reasons. And so really it comes down to how you are now going to take away that accountability. A good example was, I was in pilot training. We fly 2 different jets in Air Force pilot training. It's about a year long. It's about a 4-year education in flying condensed into 12 months. It's a very, very, very intense training cycle. But my very first a check ride is basically every flight is graded in pilot training. Like, each flight you probably have 20 to 30 boxes. Were you above average to below average in that, right? And every single flight. And the first check ride is basically, it's like a test, like kind of like a driving test, right? Pass or fail. There's only like 4 or 6 of them in pilot training, maybe per airplane that you take. So they're very important to do well if you want to fly what you want to fly. I failed my first check ride in pilot training. I was a contact check ride, so kind of aerobatics, super nervous. Yeah, the instructor was not what you would call a Santa Claus that, passes you. He was very, very hard-nosed flight instructor, and that's fine, right? And I failed it for like one thing, right? There was one item that was just unsatisfactory, and I had to redo that check ride. And honestly, I was devastated because I had in my mind, if I don't excel on every check ride, I'm not going to be able to be a fighter pilot. I'm going to have to fly something else, and that's my dream. That's what I want to do. And I was absolutely devastated. But from that, I looked at myself and I said, you know what? I thought I did okay, but, apparently I did not. The standard's a standard. And I'm committing, 14 hours a day. I'm going to commit 16 hours a day to study. I'm going to do this much more so that make sure that it doesn't ever happen again. And after that was the only check ride that I ever failed in pilot training. At the end of pilot training, I was able to pick, that's the exact airplane that I want to fly. And I got to fly that because I did good enough. So in a way, that failure, accelerated me more than if I had just been passed. So it's very interesting. The way that you take that accountability can really set you off on a fast track because it provides enough, motivation to change,
Failure is feedback. Failure is not final. It's feedback. What are some principles that leaders could take from what you learned into building teams that operate like a squadron? Certainly not trying to compare running a business to a squadron of fighter jets, but, what's some of the principles that you learned in how teams function and operate successfully in life or death situations? How can you relate those to business?
Yeah, we've talked a lot about it. The big difference that I see in companies versus fighter aviation, it's that whole commitment to accountability. It's the hardest thing. I still struggle with it every day, but that is really, like, if you really want to turn your company around, you have to build a culture of accountability, which honestly takes a lot of time, because raise your hand if you like accountability. I certainly don't. Nobody does. But
you don't like holding people accountable.
Yeah, I love holding people accountable.
Yeah. Well, I love accountability. I love holding people accountable. Yeah. I just don't want anybody holding me accountable.
Yeah. So the second thing I would say, and we've been working to do this with our business, over the last year is to systematize the business. I think the way fighter aviation works is they will always set a commander's intent. So here's the commander's intent for the mission, right? In other words, for the Iran nuke strike, the commander's intent is that these 3 nuclear facilities are rendered inoperable, right? So you have to be able to set that and then set the vision as a business owner. But then you have to give people the tools, the resources, and the accountability to achieve those things. So I would say those are the things that the military was really good at. Something that I've struggled with is when I got into entrepreneurship, there is no defined path for anything, right? I mean, in the military, it was very much here is a clear path. If what you want to achieve, here's a clear path on how to achieve that. In business, it's kind of not there. And we're trying to make that incorporated into our business. Is you got to give people a clear path to win, right? Here's what I want you to achieve, but here's a clear path to winning. It has to be defined for them, because if it's ambiguous, right? Why should they put forth the effort to do that? So I think that's probably important to do. And then, something, maybe something from the fighter world we could apply here is don't tell your people, and I struggle with this as well, right? All these lessons are internally towards me because, I mess them up all the time, is once you have kind of defined what you want to achieve, the commander's intent and the vision, this is where we're going, right? And you've trained them adequately on how to accomplish that, provided a clear path. You have to give them the flexibility to execute the mission, right? Every single mission that I flew in the military, in combat and training, the second we took off, gear in well, it completely changed, all right? And if you are trying to tell people exactly how, you're removing their autonomy and their creativity on how to actually accomplish that, because oftentimes they have better ideas than you do. They've got better information. They've got fresher information than you do. So you have to provide them the flexibility. And that's what in the Air Force, we always used to chuckle and laugh at the geeky Air Force slogans. Flexibility is a key to air power, right? Oh, we laugh and chuckle, but it was really true, right? Flexibility was key, right? Because everything changed once you got airborne. So allow them the flexibility to achieve that and just say, here's the what I need you to achieve. You determine the how, but here is the defined objective that I want at the end, right? You determine how you want to get there.
Powerful. Again, this is a leadership masterclass. Was there a time that you really struggled with fear, where fear was playing a big factor in what you were trying to accomplish or in a part of your fighter pilot journey?
Yeah, all the time, man. I mean, you're just nervous about what's going to happen. I mean, the first check ride I did that I told you about, the first check ride in the military that I did, fear, right? The first time I did air-to-air refueling, right? Crap, I don't want to rip this refueling boom off of the other jet and have to take it back. Like, I don't want to screw this up, right? First time going into combat. Sure, feel fearful there, you know what I mean? Yeah, there was lots of situations that I dealt with fear. The important thing is, like we talked about before, right? If you're properly prepared, right, that helps you deal with that better. Fear, as it's always been said, is not, or courage is not the absence of fear, but it's acting regardless of the fear itself existing. So it's really just saying, hey, yes, I am having high emotions about this. I need to know how to calm myself down. Right? We always said you fight like you train. So if you train lackadaisical, if you train terrible, right, you'll fight like that. You'll fight like you train. So make sure that your training is rigorous enough so that it kicks in. Short little sidebar for that. In the Vietnam War, we were losing a high level of airplanes, dogfights, and other sorts of combat, new guys that were in combat. And the military, the Air Force said, we need to help solve this, right? What do we do? And they said, well, once a guy gets 10 combat missions, his survivability rate skyrocketed. So they said, let's create a place it's in Las Vegas. It's called Red Flag. Fighter squadrons and military squadrons come from all over the world. We do war games. It's like 200 versus 200 airplanes, live bombs, whole 9 yards. It's the most intense thing. And the whole point of that is to get 10 missions at the hardest training that you've ever got, the hardest type of missions you've ever got. And what they discovered is once they started doing their 10 missions at Red Flag, and then they sent people to combat, right? The survivability went up because you fight like you trained. And if your training is 10 times harder than the actual combat, you're going to go to combat and you'd be like, dude, this is easy. I trained 10 times harder, and that applies to everything. I'm sure, Navy SEALs and MMA fighters and all that sort of stuff.
Man, yeah, that's good. So I feel like I said before, none of us can really relate to, the fear of flying a fighter jet at Mach and some of the things that you struggled with or overcame. But I do feel that we are all living in our own version of that right now. Whether you're a business owner, facing difficult situations that the what ifs. You mentioned, I don't want to pull the boom off the truck, or off the plane, or the, refuel, and all the things that you're doing for the first time, you're experiencing for the first time. You're trying to accomplish something you've never done before. And so you're overcoming lots of those fears and just in real time, chaotic situations or situations that could create fear in real time. Business owners, parents, people in society today are facing similar situations of constant chaos, constant change, situations that seem insurmountable. What were some systems or processes that you used in fearful moments to help overcome and work through that?
Yeah, so there's one thing, and it's called the fighter aviation developed. It's called the OODA loop. Silly name, it's an acronym. It stands for observe, orient, decide, and act. The reason a famous fighter pilot developed it, I believe, it was based on dogfighting. And the steps are really, first is to observe. You have to take in the information, right? If you're not observing the right information, right, it's all for naught. It's going to be missed. So you have to first observe what is going on. And once again, like I said, it's changing more than ever. With AI coming online, look out, people. This is going to be bigger changes in the internet. Like, you have to be very on point with what is the latest happenings changing daily. So observe the information. The second is to orient. Right? Orient really means, how do I contextualize that information into what I'm trying to achieve? Right? What does that mean? Right? Like, if I'm flying fighter aviation, right, and I'm dogfighting some guy, and he just turned on me, and now I'm point to point with him, and I'm no longer offensive, I'm now defensive, right? One, he turned. Two, what does that mean? We're now in a neutral flight. It just changed, right? So you have to contextualize what that information means to you, your business, right? The third thing is the D is to decide. You have to decide. Now, based on that contextualized information, what decision am I going to make, right, in order to achieve my objective? And then the last thing is to act. So the last part of it is, this is a loop. So it happens continuously. In a fighter, let's say in a dogfight, it's probably happening every 2 seconds. You're having to do that, right? 1001, 1002, 1001, 1002, 1001, 1002. And what they determined is that if your OODA loop operated faster than your enemy, you would win the fight, because you were able to execute all those steps quicker than your enemy. So that's good for business too, right? If you're executing those steps faster than your competitors out there, right, you're going to win in the end, because your OODA loop is faster. So that was a good maybe thing that I took from the military that probably could apply to the business world.
Man, I can imagine, Jacob, so many of my friends that I know personally, and many that are listening to this, feel like they're in a dogfight right now at this moment in time in their life and their business, feel like they are in a dogfight. And while they may not be 30,000 feet in the air, they feel like it's life or death. And man, that system of observe, orient, decide, and act, and then just keep doing that to win the dogfight that you're in right now. Man, I know that people will be inspired by that. Thank you so much for sharing that. Jacob, if you could give me and my friends one tip for mindset shift, how to, train your mind, how to, act, observe, orient, decide, act, do that effectively. What's some tips that you would share today for mindset?
I hate to say it, because it's not sexy, it's not cool, but like I said, the power of the debrief. the power of accountability, And I think if you actually have a culture of debriefing things, right, I think that's the biggest thing that I can take from my previous world to add value to their world now, is have a culture of we take actions, we execute plans, but we come back and we'll say what went well, what didn't go well, and what can we do next time. I think a big thing with accountability too is people are afraid of the consequences that come with accountability. If you have a culture that accountability means I get fired, then that's one thing, right? We always had a culture, it's okay to make mistakes, right? Especially in flying, it happens a lot. As long as the right intent was there. We had checklists where there was you had to have good checklist discipline. Like these were the rules you had to follow. Good compliance there. But then everything else, mistakes can be made and we'll talk to them and debrief them. So if you kind of have that to maybe kickstart debriefs for people. One great instructor that I had, he had 3 things at the end because, we talked for an hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours. Your mind's fried at that point. You're like, what am I going to take away, right? He would always say, there's 3 things I'm always going to end with, right? If you take nothing away from this debrief, right? One thing that I want you to keep doing. In other words, you did this well today. Keep doing that. Keep doing this. Here's what I want you to stop doing. Here's one thing I want you to stop doing. And here's one thing I want you to start doing. So keep doing this one thing, stop doing this, and start doing this. And that was a good way to, maybe make it memorable to kind of walk away from the conversation. Goes, okay, if I just shredded my notes, my dog ate my homework right now, that's the 3 things I'm going to remember to do better next time.
Man, that's so good. I actually, that just resonated with me. I remember when my wife and I first started dating, we both are obsessed with personal growth, self-development. I mean, obsessed with it. And I am obsessed because I have so much growth to do. I'm not obsessed with it because I'm great. I'm obsessed with it because I just got a lot of growth to achieve. And it feels like the work is never done. But I remember early on, she said, hey, I want to do this practice together. And she called it stop, start, continue. And what are the things that as a couple that we want to stop? It's like, hey, this isn't a hell yes. We operate in our home with it is truly, we operate like this every day. If it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. And so we would be like, what's something this is not a hell yes for us anymore. We have to stop this to achieve the version of life that we want to achieve or be the people that we want to be. Let's stop this. What do we need to start? What's something we're not doing that we should start that today and figure out how to implement that. And then, hey, what are the things that we're doing that's working, that's, elevating our life that we want to continue and maybe enhance or that sort of thing. So, wow, it's interesting that you shared that.
Perfect.
Just a great thing if, you're feeling stuck in life. But, I tell you what, it's one of the most powerful things to do as a couple. So all of my friends as a couple, sit down with your spouse, do that together. That is a powerful exercise to just go over together and be like, look at your life wheel and all the different areas of your life wheel with, hey, what's some things we need to stop? Maybe we're spending too much money. Maybe we're spending too much time. Maybe this is taking too much energy or whatever it is. What's some things we need to start? That's a great practice for all of our friends out there. Jacob, as we start to land this plane, so to speak, and I'm going to have to let you land it because if I land the plane, brother, we're going to be shreds. What's some
ejection seats? We're good.
But hey, I'm with you, so I know we'll land this safely. What's some personal reflections, man, as we wrap this up that you would share with our friends?
I think one thing is, who knows? There's maybe some former military people that listen to this that are now in the business world. I'll tell you what, that was a really big change to go from a job where I had so much purpose. It was never in doubt what my purpose was to I have no purpose now. I don't know who I am. So for me, just authenticity wise, I had to really rediscover who I was post-military. And I think a lot of veterans, they struggle with that like I did, right? You go from having all purpose to no purpose. Who am I? I had built up who I was based on my job. And that was a really big change to really kind of rediscover. So I would encourage people to really uncover the deep foundation of who you are. It's not what you do. It's not your job, right? That is different. Don't build your identity on that like I did, because when that changes, it's going to crush you. And I just want people to learn from the mistakes that I have made. And then the second part of that would be like, find a purpose. If you don't have a purpose, like find a purpose in life, right? That fits who you are, what you enjoy, right? Where you want to go. Find a purpose and then write it down, right? And then try and build, right, that true version of who yourself was, right? And the only reason I say this is because I struggled with that for so long getting out of the military, right? And we have veterans every day. I mean, I have 22 veterans committing suicide every single day. And so it's a huge, huge problem. And I just love my military brothers and sisters so much that, you know, I want in any part of wisdom that I could impart with them, right? I want to make sure that they discover that sooner than it took me to realize that.
Thank you for sharing that. My wife and I both come from military families, and it's near and dear to our hearts. So I appreciate you sharing that. Before we kind of recap this and summarize this, I am going to read some of your highlight reel real quick. So one, so you have some presidential awards for some missions in Libya. I'm not going to ask you to talk about those because it's annoying how humble you are. You were the fastest fighter pilot to ever go from student to instructor, at least at that time. That may have changed now. You are a bald dad that is very good at doing girls' hair, from what I understand. I will tell you, though, the reason why I had you on the show today, Jacob, not because you're a fighter pilot, but because it's stuff like he's a very intentional dad and husband. He's an incredible leader. He puts his girls first in everything, extremely selfless. My friend, it's characteristics like that we can all learn from and be inspired by. My key takeaways today, create a culture of excellence in your life. Do it with accountability and lead with accountability for yourself first. Remember, growth is about courage, clarity, and commitment. You talked about, knowing your vision, knowing where you're going, having purpose. Find your purpose. If you don't have it, find your purpose. Stay super connected to your purpose. And then at the end of the day, use the OODA loop. If you're trying to find clarity, observe, orient, decide, and act. And man, I am confident if you lead like that, if you lead yourself, your business, your family like that, you'll have a successful life. So Jacob, man, a real pleasure to have you on today. Friends, if you're interested in connecting with Jacob, what's ways people can connect with you on social?
Well, that's probably one thing I need to improve on. I don't really have a social media presence, but I do have a Twitter account, Jake Anderson 919. So if you want to connect with me there, that's probably the best place. X. David, thank you. It's been such an honor to be on your podcast. You are just a true leader, a true friend. I enjoy everything about interacting with you. Thanks to Melissa for putting those points there. At the end of the day, my purpose is father, husband, for God, right? And then be a provider. So, I'm honored. I've got an amazing family that supports me very well. It's amazing people like you. So thanks very much for this opportunity.
So you just listened to this episode. Now, join us in being addicted to betterment. Please subscribe to the show, share with your friends, tag us, and please take a moment, leave a review. Yeah, we do want your stars, but we really want the feedback.